The title of our session is very catchy and engaging, Lifting Poetry Off the Page. Ani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria Grazia. And thank you, TESOL Italy, for having me in the conference. I'm really excited about it. People who know me know that I love poetry and, well, I write poetry myself. And often when I express my enjoyment about poetry, the response is how it's confusing or difficult. And my response is that it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be just as simple as you make it. Now, when you read a poem, you don't have to read every word separately and think of the hidden meaning or message that the poet wanted to convey. Also, poetry, it's not only William Wordsworth or Keats. If you find yourself baffled by classical poetry, by poetry of the past, okay, read contemporary poetry. And at the same time, I'm a realist. Many of us find it increasingly difficult to allocate the time to read poetry for its own sake. But I think that it has a place in the curriculum. It can be taught as part of the reading, writing, and language lessons, and it fits quite easily into classroom projects and celebrations. And let's say, the advantages are many. Reading original poetry in class can not only reinforce writing, speaking, listening, but also, and I find this very important, it can foster trust and empathy. Poetry enables us to teach students not just how to read and understand a text, but it can also give them a healthy outlet for emotions. And personally, I would like poetry to become a choice that enriches the time we spend in the classroom creating experiences that can potentially live creatively in the future. If a poem is to become more than the object of critical attention, it has to be lifted off the page through voicing the text, either out loud or on the inner ear. So if you will allow me, I will share with you my slide. As I was saying, poetry is focused on relaying experience in a highly salient way. And there is great potential for using it as a means to build empathy and bridge gaps of understanding between people who come from different backgrounds. So in this way, it can be a vehicle for messages of social justice, bringing our attention towards and better conceptualizing injustices, and playing a dual role in helping us cope with such injustices. So let's see, I'm going to present in this session 3 poems. The first one is Originally by Caroline Duffy, then another poem by Benjamin Zephaniah, and last but not least, another poem by Nicola Davis. So let's see the next one. So Caroline Duffy, Dame Caroline Duffy, was Britain's Poet Laureate for 10 years until 2019. And she is the first woman, the first Scot, and the first openly gay or bisexual poet to hold the position, which was a breakthrough in the, let's say, Poet Laureate system. Yes? Now, she wrote a poem originally where she considers and explores the sense of isolation and confusion she felt as a child when her family moved from Glasgow to England. And even when she was only 6 years old when the family moved, she still has this profound sense of her Scottishness. So this moving resulted in a sense of confusion about her own identity and where she belongs. And the poem is her own attempt to define where her true origins lie. And she describes in the poem the literal details of the journey and the move, as well as the deeper metaphorical journey that she and her family experienced as a result of this decision. As the title suggests, originally, she considers to what extent our identity is shaped and defined not only by our environment, but about any changes in dialect and culture. She reveals the importance of early childhood memories and experiences, and the importance these memories and experiences have in creating her identity and our identity in general, and also the impact of significant domestic changes during the formative years. And the initial catalyst of the poem is the memories of the move and gradually her assimilation into the new home. And I think that perhaps the most significant line in the poem comes at the start of the second stanza, where she says, "All childhood is an emigration." And I think that in that way, she magnificently reveals, and very simply, with very simple words, she reveals the universal truth that the process of growing up is always synonymous with change. As someone who has migrated with her children, I feel deeply about this poem, and I can relate to what she feels with what my children and me felt as we integrated into the new culture when we moved from Argentina to Spain. And I think that this poem can resonate with students who have been through the same experience, as well as helping others understand what leaving your home behind to live somewhere else, be it another city, another province, or another country, feels like. So, what can we do? How can we work with this poem? For example, we can discuss what is home. And before reading the poem, you can introduce the class to the theme, writing the word home in big fonts on the board, and creating a mind map with ideas. And then you can ask them to try and find the connection between the word home and the word originally, which is the title of the poem. What relation can students find between these two elements? You can also offer questions to consider. For example, where do you come from originally? Normally, nowadays, I find that in almost every classroom in Europe, we have students from different places. And not necessarily, as I said before, different countries, but maybe different cities, different provinces. So let's take advantage of this difference. So asking the students maybe where they come from originally, asking the others who are from the same place, let's say from Rome, all the students who are from the same city, have you ever had to move to another country, another city, another neighborhood? How did you travel? How did you feel? If you haven't, how do you think you would feel? What would you miss most? What would you take with you? Is there anything you would definitely never leave behind? How does your mind, create the image of that past place? How does it differ from the actual reality of that original first experience? Because sometimes we tend to idealize that past place. So you can ask them to consider these, and of course, many other questions. You can play the memory telescope. So, for example, you can ask the students to pick a moment from this discussion about memories and write a poem. How? The poem can take any form they wish. It can be free verse, it can be rhyme, it can be whatever they want. It can be an image, a video poem also. So guide them through this telescope experience. So tell them that they are about to leave this place where they used to live. And as they stand, they look around and they describe in as much detail as possible what they see as if it was a poetic photograph. Ask them to think really carefully and think what details they can add. Then try to think about what they could see, hear, smell, feel. Was anyone there with you? Did anyone say anything? What and how was this said, and to whom? You have taken something from this place. What was it? How does it feel in your hand? So they tell all these details to a partner and they can make an informal list. And then they can use this moment that they have chosen to create a still image. It can be a rough sketch, it can be a collage, it can be a slow motion video, whatever they want. And they can write a first draft of the poem. They can rewrite it at home. They can do a first draft in the classroom. They can rewrite it at home. And you can have a second session a few days later so that they can let the poem rest a bit. My first teacher of creative writing always told me that when you write a poem, you need to let it rest for a few days and then go back to it to read it with new eyes. So let them do the same. They can then bring it to the class and discuss with the partner or partners what they can change in the poem. They can also create comic strips. They can produce a video to accompany the poem, whatever creative outcome they can imagine. As I said, the reaction to the poem can be very different for students. Allow for choice, allow creativity in this respect also. So, for example, you can show them, you can show them, I have included here some useful links. You can show them the poem, yes? You can find, for example, in YouTube, you can find oral renderings of the original poem. Then you can give them useful websites where they can create comics or video strips. I have found these two here particularly interesting. And also you can show them an example of a video poem. This here is an example of a video poem created by a student. She has created a video with images that reveal her interpretation of the poem, of the original poem. So here you have two aspects of creativity, not just discussing the poem, but also creating, discussing the original poem, but also creating their own poem, and then a visual recreation of their own interpretation. The second poem is by Benjamin Zephaniah. It's the poem Neighbors. Benjamin Zephaniah is another of my favorite. I must admit that I have a very soft spot for him, and also for George Robinson, another Black poet, British Black poet. But Benjamin Zephaniah is fabulous. He's not just a poet, he's a Rastafarian, he's an actor, he's a singer, a composer, a multi-talented man. He was born and raised in Birmingham, in a district that is called the Jamaican capital of Europe. It's Handsworth in Birmingham. And he was included in 28, he was included in the Times list of Britain's top 50 post-war writers. And he was recently nominated to be an Oxford Don. Now, when his nomination was made public, there was some kind of reaction. The Sun newspaper suggested that the ghosts of Byron, Shelley, and Keats would be turning in their graves at the thought of this man becoming an Oxford Don. So he created a short film called The Dread Poets Society, which I encourage you to look for in YouTube and watch because it is fantastic. Harry Potter fans will recognize this character here because he is one of the villains in the Harry Potter films. In this short film, he's traveling, Benjamin Zephaniah is traveling to Oxford by train, and the ghosts, there is a thunderstorm, and the ghosts of Byron, Keats, Shelley, and Mary Shelley actually appear on the train that is where Benjamin is traveling to find out the outcome of his quest. It's wonderful. I encourage you to look for this short film. Well, in the poem, Neighbors, the narrator of the poem describes himself as black, foreign, big, having dreadlocks, being uneducated, using drugs, the type you're supposed to fear, he says. He speaks a strange, unintelligible language and keeps company with wild animals. Okay, the neighbor is not described, but we assume that he's the narrator's opposite. A native Brit, white, small or medium-sized with an ordinary hairstyle, and he might feel threatened by this new neighbor who is the type you're supposed to fear. So, the main themes of these poems are fear of strangers, negative stereotypes, and racial prejudice. And part one has words with negative connotations, black, foreign, but in the second part, there are more positive counterparts. There are references, for example, to Wailers, to Bob Marley and the Wailers. Benjamin Zephaniah was a good friend of Bob Marley. And the title suggests that the two characters and other Brits and immigrants live next door to each other, close to each other, and they cannot help noticing each other. We do have the same in all Europe. I'm sure that you may have neighbors who come from other countries who are physically different from you. And you cannot help noticing them, yes? So this is what multicultural Britain and multicultural Europe are like. No ethnic group can live in total isolation. So why not make the most of it and learn from each other and enrich each other? So the message here is that prejudice makes you see things and people from one side only, often from the negative side, because you're afraid of the unknown. So it is important to understand that the poem doesn't in any way present any race as superior. It only tries to reconcile past differences and promote tolerance and equity. So you can begin working with the poem, introducing the theme and the topic before actually reading the poem. So you can discuss the word neighbors and ask students to make associations. For example, what makes a good neighbor? What makes a bad neighbor? How would you feel if a person or a family very different from you moved to your neighborhood? Yes, you can also split the poem into two parts, the positive and the negative. Divide the class into two groups and give each group one part and make them believe they are two different poems. If there are parts of the poem they don't understand or are confusing, tell them not to worry at this stage, yeah? Because what you are doing at this stage is just trying to work out their general response to the poem. Then you will work with the vocabulary because there are cultural references that are worth having a look at. So, for example, the person described in the poem is moving into your neighborhood, how would you feel? And you ask the students to discuss that. And then each group presents their conclusions. Then you can show them the whole poem or give a copy to the groups and explore the language. And offer questions to consider. How does the poem make them feel? Are there parts of the poem that stand out for me? Why? What is the poet saying that makes me feel this way? How can the same person be perceived in such different ways? Whose perspective is reflected in the negative description and who's in the positive? Why are multiculturalism and good race relations important in society? All these questions are really important to discuss with students. Then you have some creative activities to do. You can have what is called the poetry mashup. The poetry mashup is something, sorry, very simple. What you do is you combine two or more works which are thematically linked together into a poem of their own. So you provide the poem and a song that is related to the poem. In this case, I have chosen some songs that can be very related to this poem and to other poems, Equality by Maya Angelou, I Too by Langston Hughes, or Racism by Ayaan Salat. So these songs match very well with these poems as well as with Benjamin Zephaniah's poem. So what you do is you put the poem here and the song here, trying to have the lines matching the lines here, right? So what they can do is they read across the poem and the song like this, yes? And they try to blend their favorite words and phrases and parts together. And in that way, they will end up creating a unique poem of their own. Because of course, this is very personal. So some students will choose some words, some other students will choose others. So they will create a unique poem from the same set of texts. This is something that is quite common, that is in creative writing workshops. And also, you can also ask the students to pick one or two lines of the poem and take it from there and create their own follow-up from there, from one or two lines. And this is a technique that is commonly used by poets to have a sort of dialogue with the poet or the poem that inspired them. Dramatizing poetry, yes, can also help students think deeply about poetic themes and content. And also this dramatic reading helps unlock the meaning of a poem in a number of ways. For instance, in hearing the poems read aloud, students are better able to understand the meaning. So if you take students to Benjamin Zephaniah's website, I'm going to show it in the references at the end, you can hear him reading reciting, because he doesn't read his poems, he recites them. So that listening to the poet or to some good rendering of poems also helps understand the meaning, yes? So you can ask the two groups to read their half of the poem. You can also ask students to create a script that summarizes the poem. For example, the dialogue between the two neighbors, showing the negative bias first and then a positive dialogue, and how getting to know each other makes the barriers fall. Now, the next poem I'm going to present is by Nicola Davies. Nicola Davies is an English zoologist and writer, And she was one of the presenters of a very successful BBC program for children called The Really Wild Show. And a few years ago, she wrote a poem which was published in The Guardian, and it created such a stir in readers that it was made into this beautiful book that I hope you can see. And the poem is called The Day War Came. So imagine that on an ordinary day, you are at home, you are perfectly happy, living a normal life, and war comes and it turns your town to rubble. Imagine going on a difficult and long journey alone. Imagine finding no welcome at the end of it. And then imagine how a child gives you something very precious and significant. Now, this was her poetic response to the impact of governmental refugee policies as a result of the Syrian war. The line, there is a line that is really, I mean, it touched me. It says, war took everything. War took everyone, she writes in the poem. Fleeing with others to physical safety, this child is rejected repeatedly because she is a refugee. Yes. Here we have not just a poem that is very intense, but also the illustrations. The illustrations by Rebecca Cobb are also important in the book. So I encourage you, if you decide to use this poem and if you decide to use the book with students, I encourage you to give the illustrations also a place in the work that you do in the classroom. Yes, because what you can do is, for example, here you show the pictures. Let's begin by with this one. You show the pictures, right? And so you show first the girl, yes, and you ask the students, okay, what's going on in the picture? You show only the girl covering her ears. So what's going on in the picture? What makes you say that? Why do you think she has her hands over her ears? Then you show the chair, yes? And you ask them to find a connection between the chair and the girl. What else can you see? There are some pictures here, pictures of a volcanic eruption. Why do you think these pictures are important? Because they are on the cover of the book. They must be important. Why? So all these questions will start students thinking. What, show them the cover, only the cover, the full cover, yes? What do you think the story is about? Where do you think the story takes place? Nowhere in the poem will you find the place mentioned. So that makes the poem universal. It can be applied to any country, yes? When do you think the story takes place? How do you think it begins? How do you think it will end? So finally, you show them the title of the book and you ask them if they think that their predictions were correct. Before reading the poem, you can have a class discussion about the word refugees. What does it mean to be a refugee? What words do the students associate with the word refugee? Where do refugees come from? What do you think can make someone want to leave their home? What is the difference between a refugee and a migrant? Because that is also important. So you can create a mind map with all the ideas and words that happen using these questions. And you can revisit the mind map after reading the book and ask the students to see if their ideas have changed and what they have learned about refugees. So then you have, for example, here, the girl is at school, and what do you think will happen? Look, here we have, they are talking about, they're in class, they are talking about volcanoes, and here we have the volcanoes erupting, and here we have 3 helicopters. So you see that the illustrations are important. You can explore the drawings first. Show the students all the drawings in the book without going into the text, and make them notice the use of color, the use of dark and lighter spaces. Here, for example, the symbol of the eruption. All these things are very, very important. Also, you can talk about the emotions. What emotions are the characters feeling? Yes, some of the illustrations offer a lot more information. Here, for example, look at this. This is a terrible picture, very sad, very hard. So work on the illustration. Now, you read the poem, yes? You read the poem to the students, and you can also look for Nicola Davis reading the poem. There are YouTube videos where you can see her, listen to her reading the poem, but you can read the poem yourselves. You can listen to her reading the poem and then prepare your own rendering of the poem, and show that you can read the poem and the students can read the poem. Yes, that it's not for a professional poet to read. Yes. Now, after reading the poem, you can ask the students to think where the poem is set. When and where do you think this poem is set? And what gives them this impression? As I said, the poet, the writer, and the illustrator do not mention or depict any specific country. You may ask the students, why do you think this is so? Because this is done on purpose. So what is the purpose of not putting there a country, a specific country at a specific time? And then here, finally, this is not a spoiler, because if you're going to use the poem, of course, you will read it. Finally, this girl meets a group of children, and the children welcome her to the class, and they have a chair for her. This chair is a very strong symbol of integration. Yes, so you can ask the students to design their own chair and make a class display, yes, of different types of chairs. And you can have a discussion about refugees, the sort of things that refugees will find difficulty in a new country, in what ways they can help refugees, if they know a refugee personally, if there is someone in the classroom who is a refugee, well, you can talk to this person and ask this person to share their experiences so that everybody can better understand what it means to be a refugee. So a major theme of this story is kindness. And you can ask the students, how is kindness demonstrated? Why is kindness so important in everyday life? So the boy bringing the chair to the girl is a small act of kindness that will have a huge impact on her life. Yes, so you can work on that, on small acts of kindness that can affect others. You can start a kindness campaign also. you can ask the students to create a poem, a very simple one. For example, you can give them the structure of a poem like this. War came, and it follows the structure of the first part of this poem, and it can be as simple as that. Or more confident students can create a more sophisticated poem. So this is another possibility. Another creative outcome can be the cut-up poetry. Cut-up poetry is a technique that the Dadaists started in the 1920s, but it was popularized in the 50s and the 60s with the Beat Generation poets, yes? And it's just asking students to cut up words from magazines, words that they find interesting, meaningful, words that they like, and then in groups maybe, or individually, they can move these words around, these slips of paper, and they can create a poem. So they can arrange and rearrange the words into meaningful poetry. And this is a good opportunity for looking at the power of form, of shape, line breaks, choosing the best words, eliminating others. They can also do, we used to do that in the creative writing workshop years ago with my teacher, and also the found poems or blackout poetry. And this is, again, very simple. You take a piece of text, maybe a sheet from a page of a newspaper, or old books that we used to go out with some of my friends, we used to go out hunting for books that had been thrown to the containers, and rescuing those books and using them for this. So you black out, you choose the words that you like, and you black out the rest, and you see what text emerges from that. And you can also draw or paint a picture that illustrates the poem as the background, and leave the words that make the poem. Yes? So there are lots of creative ways in which you can work with this. Now, the question of the chairs, they can, as I said, they can create their own chairs. And this is something that happened as a consequence of the impact of this poem into the public. What happened was there was a campaign in Britain with people drawing, famous people and not famous people, drawing chairs and posting chairs in different media, and even putting a chair there in front of Downing Street, and the name of 3,000 chairs, that was the name of the number of refugees. This was really beautiful, really beautiful. So, can poetry bring in social change? Well, many of us poets think so. And so there is a campaign that is called 100,000 Poets for Change. And every year on the 24th of September, people all over the world read poems to children in classrooms, at home, everywhere. So maybe for next year, you want to start your campaign of Poets for Change in your own city, in your own school, and read a poem to a child. Yes, I would like to finish this with this poem, this little bit of a poem by Benjamin Zephaniah, which is so close to my heart. So I hope that you have found this presentation useful, that it has given you ideas of how to use poetry, contemporary poetry, to bring important topics and awareness into the classrooms. And I'm sharing with you also some references that you will find perhaps useful. Here you have the Dread Poet Society readings, the poem Poets for Change. Also, these poets speak out for refugees. This is very interesting. And I'm going to show you here 2 books by Michael Rosen. Michael Rosen is himself an immigrant. And this is one of the books, On the Move, poems about migration, and also Who Are Refugees and Migrants. This is a book he wrote with Anne-Marie Young, where he brings the experiences of people who are refugees and migrants, and they are famous. For example, Ozil, the former Real Madrid player, Malala, the wonderful Malala Worcestershire, who is a wonderful poet. So I think that this material can help you, poems and the experiences of all these people can help you bring the topic of migration, bridging differences, refugees into the classroom. Here you have my contact. If you wish to ask me any questions or whatever, you can always reach for me. I'm all around the place, so you can find me. And
thank you, Annie. Yeah, but just I want to thank you so much for your inspiring presentation and for your engaging and motivating activities, which I mean can be very useful for teachers in the classroom and also help developing our learners' creativity, you know, and awareness about these crucial topics that are also the thematic areas that we have chosen for our national conference. I could say that thanks to this presentation, also teachers, we can have also another contest, Teachers for Change, because
yes.
Through that, maybe if we, I would have been your student, you know, I really loved how you organize your lesson. So I think that we can play as a teachers an important role in promoting poetry in the classroom, which means also promoting hope in the classroom.
Listen, we could do something together, TESOL Italy and TESOL Spain, Teachers for Change, and have a session about this.
Great idea. Thank you so much. And
welcome. And I hope you go on and join the conference, everyone.
Yeah, and so now I invite all the participants that I warmly thank to attend the plenary sessions in 15 minutes. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You said that the road to happiness was long and winding. You said that the forest would get dark, and that the ground could shift here upon this hill we're climbing. No matter how close we get, we're still so far. But I trust we'll find the clearing. I'm trusting the trail. No matter what we're feeling, there's one way we can't fail. Let's just keep hiking. Let's plant our feet. Let's just keep hiking. Keep hiking with me. Hold my hand, baby. Keep hiking with me. You said the road up to success was an impossible test unless we had some sort of map. And I could feel it in my chest just as our feet begged us to rest. I think this just might be the end of that. But I said I trust we'll find the clearing. I'm trusting the trail. No matter what we're feeling, there's one way we can't fail. Let's just keep hiking. Let's plant our feet. Let's just keep hiking. Keep hiking with me. Hold my